This week on Right Wing Insanity Report, I have a special guest that's calling in from on the road from Arizona. We've had him on the show before, Abner Hauge, who is the editor-in-chief for Left Coast Right Watch. You were just at the Turning Point USA America Fest, which is their annual conference that they have there in Phoenix. And I wanted you to come on the show and share with us a little bit of your experience and the things that you saw. So welcome, Abner.
Glad to be here.
All right, right off the top, you had some issues, I know, getting into the conference. I know Andy No had tweeted out this kind of ridiculous tweet that you were, trying to dox people, you're not a real legitimate, journalist, all this kind of stuff. So what was that like?
Yeah, so before I even got on the plane to Phoenix, I got an email from Turning Point that said that my invite to AmFest, which I paid for. Apparently they call it an invite. Weird, right? But anyways, they said that my invite had been rescinded and that I can't go to the thing or something. It was weird. And I kind of just figured, well, I'm a very Googleable person, so they must have figured out who I am and they're not going to let me in, which kind of tracks.
Right.
They don't want
free speech for me, but not for thee.
Well, I mean, they don't want negative press and they're right-wingers and they don't have principles. They have principles, but they don't have, principles in the sense that you and I do.
Right.
I mean, they didn't want me in because I was just going to go in and make fun of them, which I managed to do anyways.
Right.
But I kind of had a backup plan from the beginning. We have a few people, myself and Haley from Arizona, Right Wing Watch, were coordinating, and we had a few other people with us who were coordinating with. And our whole plan was to have a few people out on the floor and out watching the speeches and stuff and just, get a vibe check of how the conservative movement's doing. Trump announced he's running, DeSantis is probably going to run, and we're kind of wondering, is everybody over Trump? Do they still want him, in for the next presidential race, or is everybody just disillusioned and disenchanted and wants somebody else who's going to get their agenda across more effectively, which I think a lot of them think Ron DeSantis is that guy. So that was kind of the goal, and I think we kind of accomplished that. We got a temperature check, which the long and short of it is they're not sure themselves what they want.
Yeah.
I think they're all kind of hedging their bets, leaning. Some people like Charlie, I think, are leaning a little bit towards DeSantis, but they're all hedging their bets. A bunch of them have these speeches where they're just ass kissing to Trump all the time, and then ass kissing to DeSantis a little bit, and But anyways, what I ended up doing was parking in a nearby Starbucks in a hotel lobby, and I just sat on the Starbucks Wi-Fi and watched these Turning Point kids go by, listen to their little conversations and stuff, and see people going, "Oh my God, Kelly Ward is going to speak. I'm so excited to see her." Or "Oh my God, I'm going to get to see Tucker tonight live," or whatever. And I did that for a few hours, and then while I'm getting fed pictures from the floor from a couple people and just pretending I'm there, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And obviously I was going to come clean about this on Twitter, and I'm going to come clean in our podcast episode about this. But,
But they're probably wondering how you had all those photos in the meantime.
Yeah. And I mean, we had people on the floor, so obviously it's deceiving our own viewers a little bit, but I mean, the point is like some of these people will want to some of these people want to like kick my ass, and I'd rather just do a
not
little
get your
bit
ass
of
kicked.
deception. Right? Yeah. I mean, I just want to do a little bit of deception to say like give myself some extra safety there. And I think people are fine with that. I think our listeners and viewers are fine with that.
But I gotta say, Abner, I find it really kind of sad that these are the guys that are constantly going on about having free speech apply to private corporations, having them mirror, the U.S. law on that, and bitching about being banned, and here they are not letting you into their conference, which is just really hypocritical in my opinion. I mean, even if you're not going to say something that's not flattering, free speech protects that. They want that same, ability to say that about the leftists, right? To contradict them, criticize them, whatnot. So it almost feels like it's like we want free speech, but free speech free of consequence and criticism.
Well, I mean, like there are people who want to like exterminate their enemies at the end of the day, and we're people who like, just. I mean. I don't
disagree with that. I mean,
them.
Right.
Like if you're playing by they're playing by a different set of rules. Like, so they don't care about the hypocrisy.
No, you're not wrong. And I almost feel like at this point that they're willing to give up the entire concept of democracy to push through their policy principles. They're realizing at this point that they can't win that way. There's not enough people in the country that agree with the things that they believe in, especially the Christian fascists. And so now I see them like, monarchy, let's bring monarchy back. Let's install a dictator. And it's kind of wild because, 4 years ago, you would see them with these don't tread on me flags, going on about American civil liberty. It's just wild.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was useful to them. Like, those aren't their principles. Their principles are like, their principles are the things they're actually pushing for. It's not the things in like our current society, the norms like, free speech and democracy that like we have, that sometimes benefits them and sometimes inconveniences them. It's like their principles are we want to like have a boot on every woman's throat her whole life and like make them all chattel slaves to the men in their lives. We want everybody to get we don't want anybody to be anything other than straight and cis or whatever. We want minorities to either be in their place and do the hard work for us and stay out of sight otherwise, or we want we just want to eliminate them. It's like those are their principles, like their principles, and of course you can't say that outright unless you prepare the ground for it, and they've been spending a lot of time preparing the ground for it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Let's turn to some of the speeches that were made at America Fest this week. I want to play the opening video. This was right before, I guess, Charlie Kirk spoke. It's really bizarre. So let's go ahead and play that, and you can tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Sanctioned by our leader, Xi Jinping, the one-child policy remains in stance. Violators of this policy will result in termination. Advanced surveillance has been installed within private borders and businesses to ensure productivity and protection. Remember, these guidelines are in place for your safety and direct orders from our leader, Xi Jinping. Any detection of rebellion or coups will be met with immediate termination.
America has never hesitated to stare down evil and conquer it, and it never will. The courageous will always stand up, to fight back and defend our independence. Throughout history, our heroes have fought for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we have achieved greatness as a nation.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
It hasn't always been easy, but America has always prevailed.
Today our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America.
And we are not stopping now.
It's been a good year for a lot of folks on the job front.
Unemployment in America, 17-year low.
The Paris uprising goes nationwide.
Now is the time to take a stand.
You stand on the shoulders of people before you that allowed you to have freedom. The nation is not going to save itself.
With our future hanging in the balance, are you prepared for the fight?
Yeah. Yeah, so they do these big productions every time. So one thing you got to remember is turning point events are ostensibly, the idea is they corral all of these like young Republicans in, and they give them a big light show along with the like talking points they're getting fed and the like ideologues they're supposed to be hyping up and following talking points from, and they make it this big spectacle so that they can recruit all of these kids, right? And that's kind of ostensibly the point, is to put all of these kids up in the front and for Charlie Kirk to tell his boomer and older donors, like, hey, we're getting all of these kids into these things that you guys want for the country. Aren't we doing such a good job? Give us money. And I mean, it works.
Yeah, obviously it works. I find a couple of themes there to be interesting. Obviously, there's American exceptionalism. That's part of that. You know, we've never lost, we conquer, we whatnot. But also, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit more in depth, but I noticed the theme against the Chinese Communist Party, which is like a new boogeyman that they were trying to put up. Like, that was the opening part, right? So what's that about? Did you see a lot of that going on?
I saw some of that. I haven't looked into it a lot, but a lot of that's coming from Steve Bannon. He's had like years of doing these weird, bizarre, like anti-communist Party of China like movies and stuff and propaganda films. And he had this new thing out on the floor called the like federal something of China, like Federal Republic of China, like where their idea is like somehow they're going to like, I don't know, I guess
you would think
China
they would be on board
or
with the
some
state-sponsored
shit.
capitalism.
You know?
I mean, the Chinese Communist Party
I
isn't exactly communist at this point, so I thought that was kind of bizarre.
Well, I mean, they don't care about that. They just don't like it's not a U.S. client state, so they don't like it.
Fair.
So you know.
Fair. So Candace Owens, of course, she's been involved with Turning Point USA for a long time. I'm convinced at this point that she doesn't believe half of the things she says. She's just half of the things she says. She's just along for the financial. But she had some strange points. So let's play a couple of. So let's play a couple of.
I told you guys this before, and I'm going to tell you again in case you weren't here when I said this at SAS last year. Right now in this country, this is a fact, we have never handed out more degrees ever in the history of this country, right? And yet we have never produced kids coming out of university that are so dumb. The IQ level is dropping. That is a fact. That doesn't make sense. If people are getting dumber, how is it plausible that we are handing out more degrees? Well, because that is by design. The idea is to make a bunch of people that are actually really stupid Really stupid. I mean, how stupid do you have to be to spend $100,000 on a degree in gender studies? I mean, wow. 4 years studying something that I learned the first day in kindergarten? That's the boys' bathroom. That's the girls' bathroom. Okay, thanks. Thanks. But imagine that adult, that young adult who went to school for 4 years to be confused about basic facts, who spent plausibly hundreds of thousands of dollars for that meaningless degree, who then goes out into the world and realizes that nobody wants to hire them because who the heck needs a gender studies major for anything? When's the last time you looked at your phone and said, oh crap, I need a gender studies major? It's going to be a tornado out there. We better make sure the gender studies majors are alert. Oh my gosh, my AC broke. Where are the gender studies? Nobody ever in the history of the world has needed a gender studies major.
All right. So, I'm just going to say this. This is the poster child for the Dunning-Kruger effect. I mean, the idea that we're handing out more degrees and IQs are going down is just not reality. It's just not reality.
I mean, yeah, it's a lie.
Also, gender studies is a very small portion of college graduates, a very small portion. So this idea that it's this giant thing that's happening is absolutely absurd. So obviously she's throwing red meat to the base. She wants to make it about, trans issues, I believe.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. One thing you have to think about with right-wing stuff is that they always take a grain of truth about they always take a little bit of a valid critique of the liberal order and how that's working out and how it's not working out. It is very true that a lot of people, colleges for the past, I don't know how many decades, 2 or 3 decades, have been hollowed out. They've been suffering from administrative bloat. There's less permanent faculty. There's more adjunct faculty that just get thrown away.
Yeah, because the UC system's been defunded. I think that's a prime example of that.
Absolutely. And people's degrees are worth less. They're not getting as good of an education as they should be. And that's producing a lot. And that is, it's really a failure. But it's that way because of right-wing policies. And that's exactly what they want, so that they can say, oh, well, this isn't working. Let's scrap all the public universities. Let's, just make college a thing only for elite people who can afford it again and privatize it all. And that's what they want.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because Charlie Kirk never graduated from college, and here he is running this, right-wing group that's supposed to be herding right-wingers into college, right? But you're right. I don't think, obviously it's a lie about the IQs going down. Are there issues with the definancing of public colleges? Yes, we should refinance them. We should have less adjunct professors and more full-time professors. I agree with all of that. But clearly, at the end of the day, the Koch brothers don't want that. So it's...
Oh, of course not. Yeah, no, I mean, the entire thing is basically confirmation bias to further along undermining public institutions.
Right.
And that's, that's old school right-wing stuff, right? They've been wanting to do this kind of thing forever, and they're way further along with it now. So what does it tell you?
Right.
And of course they get to pin all of their boogeymen to it. Is oh, the problem is that all of these kids are getting degrees in gender studies or whatever. I mean, a few of them are.
A few of them are, but it's hardly a ton of them. It's kind of silly that they made that.
It's really, I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's really cruel because college is a place where a young person can get hyper interested and devote their time studying like hyper-specific subjects that interest them. And that's fundamentally like not a capitalist impulse.
Right.
But then, you know, they rack up all of this student debt because of how things work now. And they get very passionate about, like, you know, okay, maybe you do want to like go into a field like gender studies where most of the jobs are just like highly competitive academic positions that a lot of the time don't pay very much.
Right. So,
you know, that is one of the cruel realities that like right-wingers just prey on.
Right.
Is there are a lot of fields where people get degrees that don't get them careers.
Right.
But like, you know, on their own. So then you have to go to like get a master's or a doctorate or whatever, and, you know, kind of pivot to other stuff. But anyways, they basically get to use their attacks on structural things like colleges to further their attacks on, you know, just the minority groups they want to target. Like they've been targeting ethnic studies for like decades. They've been targeting gender studies for decades. And that's, you know, okay, so here's, what does that tell you? Like, their bases of knowledge about minorities and, like, women and, you know, queer people and all of this stuff. And that's like, oh, well, we don't need that. What they're basically saying is we don't need those people. Like, those people should be under our boot if they even exist at all.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah. And I mean, that's basically what they're saying.
All right, I got one more clip from Candace that's a doozy as well. Let's play that.
What we are suffering from right now, every societal ill that we are suffering from, because there's a lot of it, right? This has become a cancerous society. It is entirely plausible that it is a terminal mind virus that we are fighting right now. Wokeism is, in fact, a mind virus. Elon Musk said that correctly, right? Everything that they do is to break down your psychological immune system. Talked about this on my podcast. It is so important, especially for people your age, to understand this. In the world before social media, we didn't have this kind of mental disease. We just didn't. I'm telling you, us kids growing up in the 90s, we were happy. We were very happy. Playing hopscotch outside, a little bit of kickball. Things were cool. Men were men, women were women. Men were allowed to be men. Women were allowed to be women. I miss the 90s so much. Wow, what a golden decade. Something changed. You guys are now contending with a virus that is happening online, right? It is a social media virus that is happening, and they are trying to break down your psychological immune system. It has been proven that they use algorithms. Quite literally, they use algorithms to make people aspire toward.
So, as a child that grew up in the 90s, went to college in the 90s, Gen X here, I don't know what she's smoking.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, like, the Democrats were in power that decade.
Right. That's true. Bill Clinton, neoliberal policy. What's interesting to me, too, is that she's talking about the gaming of algorithms, which the right wing does very effectively, including Talking Point USA. They have a whole entire astroturfing thing that they do.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just like Olympic level projection.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's intentional. It's like it's literally the Goebbels thing, right? Like, you know, just do something and then accuse your enemy of doing it. It works. I mean, how many times have you, like, have everybody who's clicked on one Tim Pool video or whatever on YouTube just been fed, like, oh, you will watch one Tim Pool video even though most of the time you're just, like, looking up songs you like? Well, here's nothing but, like, Tim Pool and Steven Crowder and, like, Jordan Peterson videos for your recommendation list.
Andrew Tate, like, whoever, yeah.
Until you retrain the algorithm for, like, a week.
Yep. And you go down a rabbit hole. Yeah, it's crazy. So, anyway, I wanted to share that. I also wanted to play this speech from Seth Dillon, who is somebody new for me. I was not aware of his existence until this conference. But let's go ahead and play that, and you can let me know your thoughts on that one.
So how did we get to this place? How did we get to a point where insane ideas are not just popular, but sacred? How did we get to a point where it's considered hateful to tell the truth, even in jest? I think the answer is as simple and straightforward as this. We took bad ideas too seriously. Instead of laughing at absurdity, we accepted it. Instead of ridiculing bad ideas, we tolerated them. The absurd has become sacred only because it hasn't been sufficiently mocked. But isn't mockery mean and cruel, you'll say? I think that depends. We're not talking about mockery for the purpose of tearing people down and making them feel bad about themselves. We're talking about using it as a tool to expose foolishness for what it is so that it isn't taken seriously. Mockery of this kind is a moral imperative for the obvious reason that bad ideas taken seriously have catastrophic consequences. Ask any mutilated teen who now regrets their gender transition surgery, or any inmate at a women's-only prison whose female cellmate got her pregnant. It's good that you laugh at that. Imagine if these ideas had been laughed at.
Okay, I'm laughing at you, Seth, because that's not a thing.
Yeah, well...
What, Abner, I swear to... It's like wild that this is what they pick to do. And in the meantime, yes, you know what? Hateful thoughts, like hate speech, for example, do lead to real-world violence, but they don't seem to have a problem with that at all.
Yeah, well... I mean, that speech was pretty chilling for me because, like, you know, you read between the lines of what he's saying and it's, oh, well, isn't it cruel to mock them? Well, but they're all horrible people, so we should. So we should be cruel to these people. Like, that's basically what he's saying, is be cruel to these people. And, I mean... Obviously, he's citing things like detransitioners, people who they transition and like they do stuff to transition their gender at one point in their lives and then reverse it at another point in their lives. And which is like, I don't know, something like 1% of all trans people or something or less. But it's become a huge thing for right-wingers to grift off of these people. I mean, the overwhelming majority of trans people just like are better off because they've transitioned, like mentally, physically, they're happier, healthier people, and it's, you know, an obvious fact. But, you know, if you don't want trans people to exist, you're going to handpick a few of these people and say that. I mean, if you want everybody to hate trans people,
which is not the case.
Oh, there's men in women's prisons or something. Like,
yeah,
that's what it is. It's just dehumanizing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just Nazi shit, right? Like, It's just textbook Nazi shit. Like, these are the first people the Nazis went after, and it's just happening now. I mean, this was the main thing at Turning Point, like, this year, was like, okay, the election didn't go well. Let's tell everybody to turn inward, like, repeat, get married, get married, get married, and say, fuck trans people. Like, let's just keep going after trans people and join your local school board so that you can make sure that absolutely nothing in the curriculum humanizes trans people.
Yeah, it's frightful.
I mean, and that's kind of where they're at because
it is. I mean, the violence against trans individuals has increased. I mean, it's become the norm now to see these Proud Boys and neo-Nazis at, you know, drag shows and whatnot. And they also act as if trans is some new thing that just happened in the last 5 years, when trans individuals have been part of the human species since the dawn of man. This is not anything new at all. What's new is that these individuals are just asking to be treated equally in society. That's it. And, and you're right. It was a big part of...
it's funny, like... I grew up in the 90s, like I was a toddler in the 90s and like, went through like up to preteen in the 90s. Like I was an 89 baby, right? And when I was very little, like my mom's from Pakistan. So like Pakistan's one of the first countries, or I think the first country in the modern world to like legally recognize a third gender. And so I grew up knowing about hijras who weren't women, weren't men. And I was just like, oh, okay, some people just aren't either. And that didn't confuse me.
No, it didn't confuse me either.
So all of this is just,
I was say I knew somebody in my early...
all of this is deliberate.
And acting as if they're satanic is even more gross. So... I don't know why all of a sudden in the last year this has become their new battle cry, but it really has in a way that I did not foretell seeing this happening, and it's really disturbing. All right, so I have another clip now from Michael Knowles continuing on this theme. Let's go ahead and play that.
If our society is going to do anything at all, we do not need to tolerate Drag Queen Story Hour. We don't. We do not need to tolerate leftists bullying and intimidating and doxing us. We do not need to tolerate the lies and the fraud constantly being peddled by the liberal establishment. We do not need to tolerate it, and we should not tolerate it. We should not. There is nothing hypocritical about encouraging good things and discouraging bad things. That is called common sense. That is called protecting our community. That is called politics, and it is long past time that conservatives started doing that again. Thank you very much.
So on this, I'm like, Michael, do you not realize that the left side feels that they're protecting their communities, that they're doing good things, right things? Again, he's trying to pretend as if this isn't subjective. Many people can see that their hatred towards trans individuals and homophobia is actually very detrimental and not something that is a good moral judgment, right?
I mean, that's basically it. This is an out group. We've decided that they're attacking us, so it's justified to attack them. And I mean, Nazis always did this, right? Like, they always framed everything they did as self-defense. Like, oh, we're, invading this part of Eastern Europe because it's, we're doing self-defense of, like, the Aryans there or something. We're kicking out all of these people because, like, we're defending ourselves against their tyranny over us. Like, yeah, that's basically what it always is. It's like you find a little out group. That's kind of the core definition of fascism. Is like you elevate one group of people above everybody else, and you pick an out group and you say this group is harming the nation, we need to attack it. And that's what they do.
Right. And what's happening is this is just a group that has been marginalized and they're asking for equality. And in this country, we're supposed to want equality for all. So it's very unfortunate. Dennis Prager was there. Prager University is an absolute joke. I mean, the stuff that Dennis Prager puts out there is just some of the dumbest stuff around. I just have to be frank. It's like he wants to say black is white half the time. But I want to play this clip because it deals with the same sort of principles and also, things like CRT.
Number 10. a Jew who went through the Holocaust, Viktor Frankl, lost his family. They were murdered. His beloved wife was murdered. And afterwards he was asked, he was a major psychoanalyst who wrote one of the most important works of the 20th century, Man's Search for Meaning. And he was asked after the Holocaust whether he hated the German race. That was the way the question was posed to him. His answer, I read when I was in high school. It shaped my life. He said, no, I don't hate the German race. There are only two races, the decent and the indecent. That is all you need to know, my friends. That is all you need to know. The left does not divide the world between the decent and the indecent. It divides the world between black and white, male and female, and rich and poor. Race, gender, class, not morality. We divide the world between good and bad. There are good blacks and bad blacks. There are good lesbians and bad lesbians. There are good women and bad women. There are good men and bad men. There are good whites and bad whites. We don't give a damn about whether you're white. We don't give a damn whether you're black. We only give a damn about your character.
Okay, so obviously none of that's true. They do care about whether you're gay, straight, black, white, whatever. They do care. They're the ones that are, mocking people for being different from, or, joining with neo-Nazis, to save the white race from white genocide. So that's just hogwash. I was really disturbed about the opening remarks, though, in regards to the Holocaust survivor in Germany. Number one, German is not a race. It's a nationality. Let's get clear on that, Dennis. German is not a race. And as far as dividing people by indecent and decent, clearly the Nazis were not decent people. I'm not saying that you're trying to say that they were, but the way you frame this conversation is really disturbing, in my opinion. What did you think about Dennis Prager's speech?
Oh, that was fantastic. Like, in a horrible way, obviously.
Yeah.
Prager, for as much of a joke as he is and much of a buffoon as he is, he's been on the radio so long that he was one of the most captivating speakers that day. Like, one, because he wasn't just rambling and pinging back and forth between things. Like, he had an organized speech, and it was like, if you're a little Nazi youth, it's like a very compelling speech. It was like, in terms of media, like, design and analysis, it was good. The whole Viktor Frankl thing was really chilling to me because, it kind of shows the guy's id. Like, Prager's a German name.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting because Prager went out of his way to say, oh, that's how the question was framed to him, is, do you hate Germans? Right. I said, well, a bunch of Germans were Jews, and a bunch of Germans didn't like the Nazis, even if they weren't Jews.
Exactly.
And a bunch of Germans, helped hide Jewish people in their, attics and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. It's an absurd framing because on its face, but it's chosen because it's the only way he can kind of square the circle for his point, which is to say, oh, well, we don't care about all of these arbitrary distinctions. We only care about good versus evil, which, obviously they don't.
Yeah.
But if you think about it in a more meta way, it's fascinating and disturbing because it's like saying, oh, we only care about good versus evil like this Holocaust survivor does.
Yeah, which is woof.
But basically, he's using it to make the point that the Nazis did, which is we only care about degenerates versus like the virtuous people, right? Like Prager's equating like Frankel's definition of the, like, I don't know, what did he say, like the decent. The decent people and the undecent people with the Nazis, like degenerates and virtuous people, which is like, I mean, it's kind of, it's kind of like the ultimate, like, it's a form of anti-Semitism, I think.
100% it is, yes.
When you really think about it. Yeah, I mean, you're using this Holocaust survivor's words to justify hate.
Your own hate, yeah.
Hatred and persecution of trans people. It's really disgusting.
It is. You know what, Abner, I think the problem is... Oh, sorry. At base, I think his definitions are what's problematic. The way he's viewing good versus evil is really a religious-based definition, right? Is what the Christian fascists have decided is evil and good, not necessarily what is anybody's secular idea of ethics or morality or equality or respect for other humans, right?
Yeah. And I mean, throughout the entire Sunday of the conference, every speaker had to basically endorse theocracy, like Christian theocracy in this country. They had to say, oh, well, our nation was founded on Christian values, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't. We have to bring the Bible into schools, stuff like that.
Oof. So disturbing.
I think one of them even said something about how great it is to be a Christian nationalist or whatever. And I mean, like, it's they don't really care about the Christian part, I think. They care about the fascism part. I mean,
right.
They care about the nationalism part.
Right. I agree. So this was wild. They had Libby Emmons, from the editor-in-chief for Post Millennial, which is Andy Ngo's outlet. Obviously, Libby Emmons engages in all kinds of misinformation, disinformation. She does it knowingly. I wouldn't consider the Post Millennial to be a news site. I think it's basically right-wing propaganda. But I do want to play a little bit of the speech that she gave.
And it's important that we question the medical industry and demand accountability from them.
I mean, because they've never lied to us before.
Right, they've clearly never lied to us before. But in terms of starting kids younger and younger down what they call the gender journey, which, I mean, that's such garbage. We've seen that over and over. These hospitals put out promotional videos for their gender clinics, like Boston Children's Hospital, that put out a video that said kids know their gender identity pretty much from birth. We know that's a lie. We all know that that's just ridiculous. No kid comes out of the womb and says, oh, I feel my body. You must be misaligned with my mind. That's not a real thing. And then when we show them, hey, these are your words. What do you mean by this? Do you really mean that children are born in the wrong bodies? They call us hateful. They call us names. And those names are lies as well. And the thing, too, is we can't compromise on this anymore. When they call you names, who cares? The truth is the truth, and there's nothing for it. It's just the truth. Reality is reality, and we know what it is.
But Libby, you don't know what it is. I have so many problems with what she's saying here, because she is the ultimate gaslighting, right? So actually science says the opposite. You can be sexed with the opposite hormone in vitro, and at puberty, you can be born with various degrees of both sex organs. So to say that a baby comes out of the womb and does not know that that's happening is ridiculous. Of course they do. And so at this point, they're just trying to marginalize a group of individuals, that have very real biological reasons for the way that they feel. And anybody that wants to, read up on that, Dean Hamer has done some great studies on this. I digress, but I'm really disturbed by her speech, because she says, she comes out as the editor-in-chief of a publication, a news publication, and her words have clout in this community, and it's just really the ultimate gaslighting, Abner.
Yeah, well, I think one thing we have to recognize is that the attack on trans people and trans children especially is even more than it's just about attacking their very static ideas about gender. It's about their ideas about children. And the hardcore right-wing idea about children is kind of the old school idea about, your children are your property. Like, if they, if they're born on your farm, they're obligated to work on your farm. Childhood is actually a very new concept. A lot of history, at least in Western history, like children were just kind of, they popped out, like they have to develop for a while, but they're kind of just expected to start pitching in and doing some of the work on, their parents' farms or whatever as soon as they were able to. And the idea, and yeah, I mean, if you look at how marriage is structured, there's even modern marriage rituals is like, the father gives the bride away to the husband. Because literally back in the day, like, your daughter was thought of as your property. And that's kind of what they want to bring back, is basically this idea that your children don't have their own agency. They're not supposed to. And you're supposed to have dominion over them until they're old enough to not stand it anymore, or like, go off and, right, produce their own families or whatever.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. All right, let's move to the conference floor. I want to show some of the photos and videos from the conference floor. Let's play that first clip that I have, Colin. So this is the media area. You weren't given your press badge, but I'm noticing that One America News was there. That new super right-wing anti-communist Chinese Communist Party was there. Like, all the usual right-wing streaming suspects were there. What did you notice in that area?
There was a new one, I think it's like basically a Spanish language version of like One American News Network or something.
Oh, really?
It's called Americano, and I think it's a Steve Bannon-tied project. Like, their promo video had Bannon saying "Soy Americano." It was kind of laughable, actually, but yeah, I guess they want to, expand their reach however they can, and they're clever about it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that's what a lot of this anti-CCP stuff is based on. When I interviewed Andy Campbell about the Proud Boys, his book, one of the things he pointed out to me was a big chunk of the donations that were going to the defense of the Proud Boys was coming from Chinese Americans, which I thought was really wild. So I think it's effective, and I think you're right. Also, I want to throw up some of these photos that AZ Right Wing Watch had taken. So take down the Chinese Communist Party is one. The next one is this Winnie the Pooh thing, which is kind of strange. America's rule of law must never be up for sale, except that it is, right? I mean, these guys don't want to recognize that. They want to say that Chinese Communist Party is buying our government, when in reality it's American corporations that are doing that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, like, the weird thing about it is like, okay, so I don't really understand how kind of like what the industrial economic situation in China is that well myself, but from what I understand is like there's a lot of US corporations that just make their goods in China, and they kind of have like their own little private command economies that just like happen. Okay, the CCP gets its cut and it gets its fingers in whatever factory you make over there, but okay, you're like Chanel or you're like Nike or something, you go make your products there, you ship them back to the US, and it's like just become part of American industry.
Yeah.
And
it's state-sponsored capitalism, really.
It's hollow. It's China's just like of course they're a brutal authoritarian state, like a lot of states are, including the United States at times. Right. But like, it's always like being used selectively and cynically by somebody who wants to like, have their own wedge issue in it.
Right.
And I don't really understand what Steve Bannon's wedge issue in China is. I don't really understand what he's doing. Maybe he wants like a more fascist, like a China that's a more like interested in allying with his kind of fascists. But like, I don't know.
I don't know either. I thought it was kind of weird.
It's very weird. But I'm sure that like once people do the digging, it'll make more sense.
Right. I mean, and even when you went on Twitter and you went to the America Fest hashtag over the weekend, it was mainly accounts that were related to this anti-CCP stuff, like the entire threads of it. Like it was really weird how that was being astroturfed. So something that I have noticed was not this year that I'm not seeing so predominantly in the past. A lot of religious stuff, a lot of anti-choice, anti-abortion things. I want to throw up some of these photos. So, here you have, I am the pro-life generation. They're obviously celebrating the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Your soul matters. I love this one that says brainwashed. The devil something, I can't make it out, but brainwashed. I mean, I would say a lot of these people that are in these extreme religious groups are brainwashed, right? From the outside looking in, it seems that way to me. Then, there's this one, which I thought was funny with the t-shirts. It's like a take on the Brandon thing, except now we're replacing that with Jesus. Reborn lives matter. I guess that's a throwback to being a born-again Christian. So did you feel like religion was, Christian fascism in general, was it one of the biggest issues that was happening there this weekend?
Huge. And I think that ebbs and flows with how well they do, because I think a lot of them don't really even like going to church and doing the whole prostration in front of religion thing that much. A lot of them don't. But there's a huge base of evangelicals that keep the Republican Party running, and they really retreat back into making more inroads into the evangelical community whenever they don't do well, I think. And this year, like, they got the house. I think they got the House, or I'm sorry, I'm blanking. Like, did they barely lose the House and barely get the Senate, or was it the other way around?
The Senate's still in Democratic control with the two independents. The House is in.
Right.
They did not win as many.
House.
Barely. They expected to do a lot better, right? This was supposed to be this giant red wave. Yeah, there was no red wave as they had predicted. So, and in Arizona, they took a shellacking, obviously.
So Trumpism, especially more than the Republicans themselves, took a huge hit. So they're kind of retreating into this, like, because they don't want to talk about what their plan is for the next electoral cycle. They don't want to worry about that right now. They're retreating into, oh, well, we got Roe versus Wade repealed. They're spent a lot of time during the speeches and on the propaganda on the floor saying, oh, well, what you need to do is start praying more and going to church more and, like, turning inward and bettering yourself. And I mean, that's always the refrain when they don't do well, is turn inwards. And this isn't just like a right-wing thing. This is kind of like whenever you have like a group of people who expect some big thing to happen and it doesn't happen. Like you see this a lot with cults, right? Is okay, so like the New Age movement, the 90s turned out to not be a very good New Age. Like economically, a lot of people weren't doing so hot. Like the age of Aquarius didn't come to pass. All of these like wonderful things that the New Agers thought would happen didn't really come to pass. Basically, Charlie Kirk and a bunch of these other people were trying to set this tone the whole weekend, saying, I don't want to, we shouldn't talk about or worry about the next electoral cycle. We shouldn't worry about getting Trump back or any of this stuff back. And when somebody asked Tucker Carlson, are you going to support Trump or DeSantis? He was like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't predict the future. And kind of tried to wash his hands of it. And instead, all they really wanted to do was turn inward, right? Like they really just want to have everybody focus on local school board races and building their base and doing the tried and true grassroots stuff that they know works and getting people more fanatically devoted to the like core tenets and hope that carries them through until they have something that they can rally around.
Right.
And
which
that's kind of what
apparently
always happens. Like,
yeah, which apparently is going to be the Chinese Communist Party. I want to play really quickly. I want to end the show with this. This is a propaganda video from this this new group that was there. I want to play it because it's kind of wild.
Save America, take down the CCP.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? It's kind of weird because that's what they're saying. Save America, this, like as if the Chinese Communist Party is coming for America. I thought it was really strange. And then I want to play
some. Sure.
I want to play a sector.
I noticed during some of the speeches there was these talking points where they were like, oh, well, there's a bunch of students coming from China to the U.S. and they're being forced to spy on all of us. So I guess there is this kind of xenophobic paranoia thing about Chinese college students, which has been on and off for years. I think it got worse during COVID, but I don't know where they're going with this, to be honest.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't either. I want to play a second video of people chanting about this that was taken in the aisles there. Take down the CCP. Take down the CCP. It's...
Take down the CCP. Take down the CCP. Take down the CCP. Take down the CCP! 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 Take down the CCP!
I mean, it's really obviously there's some astroturfing going on here.
I mean, the whole event's an AstroTurf event. What do you expect?
I don't know, Abner. I just feel like all of a sudden we used to see the anti-CCP things at Trump rallies. Like there would be small contingents of it. So that's nothing new. But to have it completely expanded into this, yeah. Okay, yeah. I mean, this is new stuff. All right. I know you got to get going. You've spent an hour with us, and I do appreciate your time, Abner, and going through some of this stuff and sharing your reporting with us. If folks want to follow you, where's the best place for them to do that?
At LCRW at newsy.social on Mastodon. If our Twitter's still up, it's at LCRW News. Our Patreon is patreon.com/LCRW. And our reporting is all on leftcoastrightwatch.org.